This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District Board, January 27th, 2022. Let's call the roll, please.
Yes. Director Roberson? Director
I'm
Anderson?
here, and thank you, Joelle, as always, for helping me connect to this Zoom link.
You're thank you. Director Anderson?
Yes.
Director Malik?
Yep.
Director Riley?
Here.
Director Edwards?
Here.
Vice Chair Adams?
Here.
And Chair Paul.
Here.
All directors are present.
Thank you. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance before we dive into our meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
Yes, Chair Paul, there's one addition to the agenda, and after oral communications, we will recognize outgoing Chair Alvin Edwards for his service as Chair of the Board of Directors for calendar year 2020 and 2021. And that's the only correction that I have for the agenda. Dave, do you have any?
I do not.
Okay.
Very good. So with that correction, we will proceed to oral communications. This is a time in our agenda for any member of the public that would like to address the board on a matter not listed specifically on the agenda, and on closed session items and on consent items. If you would like to speak to the board on any of those items, please raise your hand. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. If you want to address the board on items that are specifically listed after the consent agenda, you can do so at the time that we address that item.
Sarah, if you're out there, are you ready to show the timer?
I am.
Okay. At this time, I would like to invite John Tilley. John, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you, board members. John Tilley, co-chair of DFDAVI, along for the Coalition Against the Businesses. The mayor of Marina, Bruce Delgado, was recently quoted saying that the pursuit of Measure J, which we saw embodied by LAFCO, will be seen as the main reason there is a delay in getting the water supply that the coastal cities so dearly need, and it is a shame. Part of the main reason for the delay we have right now is that when the CDO went into place, it was part of an agreement with the State Water Resource Control Board that we would build a water supply project that was ASR, that was Pure Water Monterey, and that was desal. Subsequently, when Public Water Now took over the board of the water district, the pursuit of desal was thrown to the side and Measure J replaced it. Previously, the district had agreed to that. It was signed by Dave Stolt, it was signed by George Riley, it was green, it was sustainable, and it was needed. At the time that the Water Control Board agreed to the cease and desist order, which is an extension over previous deadlines, vehemently, we all remember, said, do not come back. I can't believe we're doing this. Do not come back and ask for an extension. But apparently that's what we're doing anyway. We're going back and asking for more water for housing because it's been recognized that housing, the cost of housing here has greatly supplanted the demands on the public versus the cost of water. And we've falsely limited the supply by incorrectly supplying water. The mayor of Monterey intimated last week in the water district meeting said actually that there are hundreds of units ready for action in Monterey, except we do not have the water needs to do so. Again, why don't we have that water? Because we're pursuing Measure J rather than a water supply project. They're conflicting goals, and I think anyone is going forward that says they're both for housing and for Measure J has contradicted themselves. And it's difficult to have Marina tell us down here that our green project isn't what should be, pursuing, that they blocked our ability to pursue a green project. Meanwhile, paving over sand dunes, building $1 million homes that are not for affordable housing, pulling water from the 180-400 aquifer as well as the deep aquifer, and sending cars up and down Highway 1 every single day with carbon emissions. The demand and supply report previously used by the district is being proven to be, over time, not a good document. The amount of water supply is not there. Demand numbers by RENA have been greatly increased, which truly does represent the cost of the desire for housing here on the peninsula. Meanwhile, we're asking Salinas to maybe possibly help us by supplying us with some of the water. They have their own problems over there. They are responsibly solving them. Lastly, may I ask if people would drop the term lettuce curtain from the conversation? It's an archaic, unnecessary, destructive term. And for most of us in the county, it is no longer how we view the county. Thank you.
I missed that, Mr. Tilley. Thank you for your comments. Are there other members of the public who would like?
Yes. Next up, we have Rudy Fisher. Rudy, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Thank you, Joel. Ladies and gentlemen, at your January 21 goal setting meeting, you just got parts of the Brown Act with deal with remote meetings. I'd urge you to comply with all aspects of the Ralph and Brown Act, and that includes that a majority of the board should never gather for deliberations to discuss agreements or make decisions ahead of time without public having an opportunity to be present and give input. I'm not making any accusations, I'm just presenting a reminder. I also want to remind you of all of the goals of your agency, and these are the ones on your website. 1, to increase the water supply to meet community and environmental needs. 2, to assist California American Water in developing legal water supply. 3, to protect the quality of surface and groundwater resources and restore the Carmel River. 4, to manage and allocate available water supplies and promote conservation. Not only with a fairly relatively recent passage of Measure J, did you add to evaluate the feasibility of acquiring the local water company. I know that the majority of public water now's efforts are to pursue this last goal, but all of the goals above are the ones that the MPWMD board members should be pursuing. It seems to too many people that you have been focusing on goal number 5 to the detriment of all the others. That approach is wildly off track. You are ready to spend up to $700 million to acquire Cal-Am, which does not create one single new drop of water. For about half of that, or even less, we could build a decent-sized desal plant, get past the state CDO, and allow people to add bathrooms to their homes or build on vacant lots, which they have paid property tax for years and even decades. I'm one of those people who's looking at buying a vacant lot, but I know will pay property tax without actually being able to build on it. We have lots of vacant lands which can't be built on because of the CDO. Now we have new and larger arena numbers, which the state of California has pushed on the cities through AMBAG. But we do have a need to find a way to provide more and more affordable housing. We remain under the cease and desist order the state imposed on us because you still have not fully met the first 4 goals. I'd like to see us achieve all of those goals. So I believe now is the time for you to stop playing games for public water and now political reasons and work on ways to develop new sources of water for the Monterey Peninsula. Thank you.
Thank you, Rudy. Next up, we have Susan Steovoni. Susan, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Thank you, Joel. I had a few comments on the annual report meeting that you had just recently. I think it's reassuring to see you reaffirm your continued goals of pursuing an adequate, safe, sustainable water supply, protect our environment, and the implementation of Measure J, despite Mr. Sonniff crashing in with a dire warning of ruin. The district is following the legal directive of the voters. So far, it's clear it's both feasible and doable to buy out Cal-Am. I'm sorry, I just lost my page. Anyway, it's doable and feasible to buy out Cal-Am, and despite the narrative that continues to be given by Cal-Am supporters, it's obvious that the district is an excellent agency doing excellent work by virtue of the awards you've won and all of the accomplishments you've done. And I do believe it's time for you to take another level in engaging with public discourse about what you do accomplish, and to inform local electeds and officials, as well as the public, and educate them about the water supplies that you do produce. And despite this continued narrative from CalAmp supporters, I think it's really important to fact check those narratives and to present the truth to the public. And I just want to thank the board for their proactivity. I want to thank the general manager, Mr. Laredo, and the staff, and especially Suresh, for the excellent work they do and for the award-winning work they do. And I do believe that this is an ethical agency moving forward in an ethical manner. And I applaud you all. And I give great thanks to the board and also to Alvin Edwards for being a wonderful leader in the last 2 years. And welcome to Karen Paul, who I know will be another wonderful leader as chair. Thank you.
Next up, we have Michael Bear. Michael, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Good evening. I have to reply to the naysayers. I wasn't planning to speak, but now I'm speaking. Can't believe John Tilley is referring to the desal plant as a green project, given what it would do to the aquifers, given the years and years of all the arguments we've been making all these years about how it's an environmental disaster, taking Marina's water supply and putting it at risk, and yet he refers to it as a green project. Seems to think it's an affordable one as well. And he represents commercial interests. And, you know, it's really becoming apparent that the commercial interests have, well, they've ignored the needs of the residents for all this time. They've never addressed the fact we have the highest water rates in the nation. They never comment on that. And I just want to remind people that, you know, businesses, they have a better water deal. The big businesses pay a flat rate, and they get to write their water bills off as a cost of doing business. So they have a completely different scenario. I can't believe we're still doing this debate. I'm sorry to be taking this time. I remember the mayor of Carmel said, you know, just cut it out. Measure J was passed. Let's get past it. Why are we still having these arguments? And I just want to point out also that CalAm has not developed a single drop of water in 50 years. And part of the reason is they have no engineering department. They don't have the capacity to figure it out in-house. Their vice president of engineering does not even have an engineering degree. They use lawyers and lobbyists to get their way. I don't even know who we're speaking to. I think we all know this. I don't know who's listening, who doesn't know this. And yet I feel compelled to, you know, rebuke these ridiculous statements that we keep hearing from the commercial interests, the big business interests, the hospitality industry, the real estate industry. These are the people that want to control the utilities and get what they want, so they have sweetheart deals to work with private business rather than going through public agencies where we have a level playing field and it's transparent and there's no backdoor dealing. And that's all I have to say this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bear.
Chair Paul and Sarah, we do not have any members of the public who wish to address the board at this time during oral communications.
Thank you, Joelle. So this is the time in our agenda when we get to thank Director Edwards for his past year or 2 years as board chair. And I guess I'd just like to say briefly that my first year on the board has just ended working as vice chair with Chair Edwards. It was a great working relationship. It's the way we work together the way colleagues should work together. We communicated frequently and openly, and we listened to each other and valued each other's perspective. And actually, I think that's true of the entire board, and that makes it wonderful to work with this group of people and this board. It's not always that way, so I feel very fortunate. So that's, I briefly, Director Edwards, thank you so much for the year that you led the board, that we just finished, that you led the board, and for your work that you and I did together, especially. Who else would like to say something?
Me, I do.
Safwat, please. Director Malek.
In my brief presence and experience with, I'm gonna call you Alvin Edwards. You have been a leader. You have been a straight shooter. You have been get to the point and state the facts and stop the other BS. And I do appreciate your leadership. I do appreciate your presence on the board, and you are such an amazing gentleman. Thank you so much for all your service, sir.
Director Adams, Vice Chair Adams.
Thank you. I want to thank you as well, Alvin. I miss so much sitting next to you at the board meetings in person because you exude so much energy. I would just get pumped up sitting next to you. It worked out very well for me, and I think for you as well. Your vast knowledge of what it is that we're dealing with here, you know, the experience that you brought to the table, all of the years that you put into this issue is so appreciated. I've learned a lot from you, and I know I still have a lot more to learn. So don't go very far away. But thank you again for your service. You did a great job as chair, and I very much appreciated serving with you.
Director Anderson.
Yes, I totally agree with everything people have said. I have enjoyed very much working with Director Edwards, and he puts a smile on my face, and I like it when he gets right to the point. He makes things very clear. And when I've contacted him and asked him questions, he's always extremely helpful, very generous with his time and very helpful. So we were lucky to have this director for the last couple years leading the charge. So thank you, and I'm glad you're staying.
Mayor Roberson.
Yes, I will join the parade of accolades. Alvin, you run a really good, tight meeting. I appreciate that. You're a good listener. And that is really a quality that we all need, I think, in this world. Thirdly, you have strong opinions. You state them clearly, but you're always respectful of other people who may or may not agree with you. And finally, I love your sense of humor, and you even laugh at my corny jokes.
Director Riley.
Yeah, Alvin, we've known each other for a few years. What is most amazing to me about Alvin is that he's the last person to speak on many issues. And after all of us have already gone through everything that we think is important, lo and behold, Alvin comes up with something that none of us thought about. And it is important, and it's directed to the general manager often, but it's also directed to us as an educational moment. I'm just fascinated by his brain. He's just a very deep, broad, comprehensive thinker, and I just love it when he's at the table. Just love it. And I'm going to miss you as chair, but I know you're still going to be around, so we will still. You can still share things with us. And thank you for all you've done so far.
Anyone else? So hang in there with us, Alvin. I guess I'd just like to reassure anyone who may have any doubts that the board is, the change of chair doesn't mean a change of direction. I think we have a lot of momentum and unity and sense of purpose, and we're just going to keep going the way we're going.
Well, thank you, Chair, and thank you, board. I appreciate all those comments. I had my mic off because the president said something, had a hot mic, and I didn't want to sit up there and say something while somebody was talking. and and everybody hear it. But I appreciate it. But one thing I like to thank is the public itself for standing by this board over the last 2 years. I like to thank the board for all the good work we done. We done, not Alvin done it. We done that. And the votes, we may disagreed on some things, but we came back together after the disagreement. I like to thank our general manager, CFO, and our general counsel for all the great help they gave us over these last 2 years that I was board chair. I know it was a little hectic there for them. I used to call them every week and give them a lot of stuff, and they got it all done. But I want to thank Dave Stokes for all that good work, Mr. Laredo, our general counsel, and Celeste, our CFO. And finally, thank the staff for all the hard work they done over these last 2 years. Joel, you did a lot of work. You picked up that phone every time I called. And sometimes you didn't, you got a phone call from somebody else. But I know you was on top of things, and I appreciate it. And Sarah for getting all the packets and everything out. And the rest of the staff for all the good reports and stuff they done. But I want to thank you all. I'm gonna shut my mouth now so we can move on. I picked up my plaque here. I'm gonna put it on down there with the rest of them. I usually decorate the floor, as George Riley knows. And I will tell you all, it just keeps me grounded when I see it down there. So I'm gonna close with that. Thank you.
Thank
Just
you.
a clarification. It wasn't every week. It was sometimes 2, 3, even 4 times a week. But every one of them had value and ideas behind it. So it was always good to talk to the chair because something good came out of every one of those.
Thank you, Dave.
All right. So let's move on to the consent calendar.
Yes, so there are 8 items here. Almost everyone has gone through the administrative committee, other than the minutes. And with that, unless a member wants to pull something, we'll take a motion.
I would like to pull item 2, the board committee assignments for this year, so that we can take that up after our discussion on possibly streamlining our committee structure.
Excellent.
Would any board member like to pull any other item? Okay, let's
I move approval of the minutes. I mean the consent calendar.
I believe we need to ask if any member of the public wants to pull any item from the consent calendar. Let's do that first.
Yes, so if you would like to pull any item from the consent calendar, please raise your hand, or if you're dialing in, push *9. And Chair Paul, I do not see anybody with their hands raised.
Very good.
Chair and Joel, just and maybe Dave Laredo weigh in. Point of clarification. So we don't have an action item later. The committee assignments are pretty much well understood by the committee members, but having it on consent actually ratified the assignment. So if we pull it and wait for the discussion under item 15, we will not have an opportunity to ratify these tonight. I don't know how we want to address that.
I disagree. This would then come immediately after 15, and it would come as an action item.
Okay.
To be voted upon.
That's what I wanted to hear. Very good. Thank you.
That way, if we want to make any changes to the proposed list, we can do that and then vote. Yeah, okay.
Perfect.
So we have Director Malik has moved to adopt the consent calendar. Is there a second?
Second.
Director Anderson seconds. Let's have a roll call vote, please.
Yes, Director Malik,
Yes.
Director Roberson,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Aye.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Edwards,
Yes.
Vice Chair Paul,
Yes.
Vice Chair Adams.
Aye.
Sorry, I got so used to saying Vice Chair Paul all of calendar year 2021. Now Chair Paul.
No offense taken.
And the motion passes on the vote of 7-0.
Now we're time for the general manager's report.
Yes, and while Joel is bringing up the PowerPoint, I did want to address a couple of the public comments. This district has clearly not taken their eye off the ball on water supply. It's a priority. It's in process. We had a pre-hearing conference with the Public Utilities Commission on Tuesday, working on Pure Water Monterey expansion, which will bring an additional 2,250 acre feet to the community, which will be more than sufficient to do our housing needs for the next decade or two. Also, with respect to housing, we've had no discussion about extending the cease and desist order. We are now living within our means here on the Monterey Peninsula. The effective diversion limit from the Carmel River is down to the legal limit beginning January 1st of 2022. And we are willing to live within that. All we've asked for with the housing issue is selective non-enforcement of condition 2, but not requesting any additional water or an extension of any effective diversion limit. So there's been a little bit of misstatement going on there. We are certainly not pursuing Measure J to the detriment of other goals. And when the board met on the 21st, the priority goal was still long-term water supply and lifting the CDO and working towards the benefit of the community to have enough housing, enough water for housing and commercial growth. So let's not get confused. It's a priority. So with that, Joel, if you're ready, great. This is the compliance report for the cease and desist order and the Seaside Basin adjudication. Next slide, please. The takeaway here, the target now includes our quarterly water budget reflecting the reduced or severely reduced to the fundamental baseline legal limit off the Carmel River. Yet year to date, our actuals through the first quarter of the water year are below the target, which is a very positive sign. Let's go to the next slide, if you will. A couple of things to point out here is we are getting about 11 to 12 acre feet from the Sand City desal plant on an average monthly basis. Table 13, 42 acre feet, which means that the rains of December and October, which were above normal, actually produced water that's under a different water right, which will only help us comply with the cease and desist order in the current water year. And then you can see Pure Water Monterey recovery continues, not quite at target, but we're beginning to enter a shift where there will be more withdrawals of Pure Water Monterey water here as we head into the shoulder months of the late winter, early spring. Next slide, please. This is production from all sources for customer service or demand. It's a 3-month total. The important thing to see here already is that we're under last year by about 160 acre feet, which is confusing. At some point we need to level out, but it's actually a good place to be as we head into the remaining 9 months of the water year to have a little bit of a head start. And that could be due to all the precipitation we've had, but people typically don't irrigate during the winter, although I've seen a few sprinkler systems actually going during the rain. But we're looking good on a demand basis, as you can see from that bottom right-hand corner set of numbers. Next slide, please. We've talked about rainfall. You'll see January on the next slide, but here you can see of the first 3 months, wildly in excess of the October and December norms, which are the red line, blue line being the current year. And the total of all three blue bars exceeds the norm by about 100. It's about 142% of normal.
Great.
Yep. Next slide, please. This is cumulative rainfall up in the valley near the old San Clemente Dam site. Red is cumulative, and by virtue of it being relatively flat there in January, what that means is we've had nothing in January, which for us is actually a good thing because we ceased injecting on or about January 3rd for the aquifer storage and recovery project. And basically our permit conditions would have prevented us from doing any more injection later that same week. And so as we've just been going through January, we aren't really in a position to inject. And at the same time, we don't want to inject because we're running the tracer test for the Pure Water Monterey project, an extrinsic tracer test where there's actual dye in the mixed with the water and in the ground so we can see how fast it travels. So it's somewhat good that we're not operating. And then also we're in construction of a parallel pipeline to leverage both south to north and north to south movement of water in that area near the aquifer storage and recovery. And that second pipeline will come online in late February. So right now we couldn't extract Pure Water Monterey water while injecting ASR water. So not a bad piece of dry weather to have, but we sure as heck hope that we begin to see rain again in February and March. The AT&T golf tournament is a little bit early this year due to scheduling. It's, I believe, February, the weekend that includes February 5th. So, 9 times out of 10, it rains during the AT&T. That may be a little early for our purposes, given that we'd like that parallel pipeline in place a little bit later in February. Next slide, please. This is a measure of stream flow in the river, unimpaired stream flow. And again, in December, it was really buoyed by the rains. And I think you'll see a pretty good flow also in January, but it has attenuated through the second half of the month. So stay tuned. And that concludes the GM report on compliance. Item 10 is a brief update on Measure J for our listeners and viewers. On January 5th, the Local Area Formation Commission, or LAFCO of Monterey County, did vote on a resolution. The resolution affirmed the dismissal of the district's application to activate its latent powers in front of LAFCO. And those latent powers were to sell retail water. We still believe that we probably already have that power that has been activated since we've been selling water retail since the mid-90s. But what represents a class of service for LAFCO versus the industry as a whole is probably a discussion that will be had sometime in the future. We have hired litigation counsel to look at our options with respect to the decision, primarily because in midsummer, the staff recommendation was to approve activation of our latent powers. In October, the recommendation of LAFCO staff was to approve activation of our latent powers. And December 6th, the recommendation of staff was to approve activation of our latent powers. And all three times, they were supported by substantial evidence in the record. So here we stand today without having had those powers activated. We did successfully, or we're moving successfully towards annexation of 58 parcels, and our municipal services review and sphere of influence study was accepted and approved. So those 2 out of 3 pieces are moving forward, and we're going to spend some of our attention on trying to rectify the LAFCO decision on the latent powers. Until we decide as a district and you as a board, we will not move forward with authorizing the update of the appraisal and of making an offer. However, that can be done without LAFCO approval. So we need to kind of see where we think LAFCO is going to go and make some decisions about whether we try to move on without LAFCO and how strongly we feel about that as a group, which we will look at in a month or 2 after we've got a little more signal from both our attorneys and LAFCO as a unit from their commissioners as to whether reconsideration will be successful. And we are going to apply for reconsideration with LAFCO as early as Monday. I think we are ready to do so. The draft is in review. Your general counsel has forwarded his comments to our litigation attorneys who will be taking a look at it. And we should be able to wrap that up by Monday morning. So a lot of activity with no certain outcome. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them. That concludes my report.
Questions for General Manager? Yes, Director Riley.
Dave, at the special district meeting recently, I can't remember whether it was that meeting or some other time. I think I asked Kate McKenna of LAFCO staff, the general manager there, the director, what's the sequence of events for reconsideration? I didn't know whether if we apply next week, does it go on their agenda for the end of February? This is my question. Does it go on the agenda for the end of February? Do they then accept it or reject it? But if they accept it, then it goes to a March hearing. Is that your understanding?
No, my understanding is it would be considered with a hearing or at least a meeting to, as an action item on February 28th.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Other questions? Director Edwards.
Mr. Edwards, you're on mute.
Thank you. Jim, thank you for the report. Our stuff, the LAFCO about the parcels and stuff, did that go to the state already? You mentioned it. Or do we have to wait?
Well, it has gone to the state. It went to the state and the county. The county staffer who looked at the legal description and all of the survey information, points of a compass and distance and so forth, had some questions. I think the rounding error came up with, when he did it, he was a foot short, that the legal boundary came back around and didn't quite meet. And so our surveyor consultant re-looked at it and prepared some information that we've subsequently sent to the county. We've gotten no feedback whatsoever from the Board of Equalization at the state, but yeah, that information has gone. And so we're just awaiting their action.
Okay, and my next question, could you check with CalAm, find out is they ahead of schedule or behind schedule for that pipeline? I went by there the other day, yesterday, and that pipeline is at the ASR site. So the outside the gate of the ASR site. How much work, do they have to do to tie into that, or do they have to go up Parker Flat Road a little bit? I've seen pipe up that way. So
we've had that conversation. I would say they're on schedule if plus or minus a week is on schedule. They may be a week later in February than we had talked about, but generally speaking, they made really good progress.
Yes. So, I just want to clarify to make sure we can get some injection in. I'm glad we did the 71 acre feet earlier, but make sure we can get some more in. That's all I got, Chair. Thank you.
Other questions for the General Manager? Dave, maybe our next meeting, you can update us on the annexation, the status of the annexation. I have just one question, going back to item 9 on the status report on the water. So if I recall the supply and demand numbers correctly that you showed us, last quarter, just over a third of the water produced was from Pure Water Monterey. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that is correct.
Is that the first quarter that that's been about those proportions, or?
Yeah, even before the Carmel River limit was reduced, we were getting up there, and in fact, we are approaching, more like 40% of the total. This is a transition year, so the company was able to take a little bit more water in this first quarter of the water year because it's the last 3 months of last calendar year. So they were trying to maximize the river for those 3 months. And so you'll begin to see Pure Water's impact increase because now the limit on the river is even lower. But at the end of the day, we're going to end up 3,500. We've been in discussion with Cal-Am and Monterey One Water about availability of extra water if needed. And we've demonstrated there's easily another 300 to 400 acre feet in the current water year and 400 to 500 acre feet in the next water year, which they may or may not have an interest in. But we could see providing as much as 4,000 acre feet, and current demand remains about 9,600 acre feet. So whatever that math works out, that's what Pure Water's contribution could be. But even at 3,500 acre feet, which is, the expectation, yeah, it's about 37% of total. So yeah, it's proven to be a critical resource, and it's doing its job. And the month of January will be the highest injection month that we've seen. And the month of December was the highest injection month to date. And that's because Monterey One Water now is playing with some of the capacity of the plant. It's been running roughly about 3.5 million gallons per day. Its nameplate is typically about 4 million gallons per day, but it can run at 5. And so they're trying to find that sweet spot as to where it can run sustainably over a long period of time. And that could be 4.8, could be 4.7. So we're going to find out. But until those 2 new deep wells come online, we've got nowhere to put that water. And so once the wells come online, we can find out what the plant's capable of doing. And so that'll be an exciting period here in the coming months.
And we're hoping that will happen in February or March.
Yeah, the deep wells are scheduled to come on also in February. All the projections that we've run assumed a 4-week delay. We're still waiting on a pump to arrive from Arizona, which should be any day now. And then the second pump for DIW4 is trailing by a week or 2. So, but yeah, the new deep injection wells are likely going to be operating by March 1st.
So it's very clear and worth noting that Pure Water Monterey is now providing a very substantial portion of our water. Yeah. Okay.
Madam Chair, I do see that John Tilley has a hand raised. It may relate to the general manager's report.
Well, if there are no more questions for the general manager, let's go out to the public then.
Yes, so if you have public comment on this matter, please raise your hand, or if you're dialing in, push *9. Sarah, do you have the timer ready? At this time, I would like to invite John Tilley. John, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you, everybody. 3 minutes sometimes isn't enough, and I really had more to say at the opening, but this is a chance to kind of fold some other stuff in. The parallel pipeline, which is just necessary for the ASR, something that could have been accomplished years ago, but it wasn't, and we lost a couple years, I would say, of including this year, clearly, of production because it was not approved in the interest of not allowing the project to move forward. It was said in public comment repeatedly when that was brought to this board years ago that this looks like it would help Cal-Am, therefore we shouldn't do it. No, actually, it helped the community. And singling out, Cal-Am is just like the victim in this, or the person that should be treated as not the good player. Isn't really the right way to look at it. This is a partnership between all of us in the community, including Cal-Am. And the back then we needed it, and it wasn't approved again because it was said to be something that would benefit Cal-Am. And unfortunately, we lost years of production off of that. Meanwhile, yes, it's great to see the new wells coming online. It's great to see the tracer study coming through. We were told that the water would move through the seaside aquifer over a 6-month period. It was closer to 2 months. That's important to know if we have good, clean water that's being recycled, that's being transferred through the seaside basin. The fact that a big percentage of the production is pure water Monterey is what was always intended, that it was part of the three-legged stool. However, the percentage is off. It was not expected to be that high because we took a big piece of the water supply project out, which would be the desal. I'm not here supporting Cal-Am. I'm here supporting sustainable water supply project. And we all agree that that project included desal. Trying to say it doesn't and trying to say that demand equals supply isn't accurate in this case. The last thing I'd like to say, going back to the earlier points, is that I don't know anybody that's told me that they are having to work 2 jobs to pay their water bill. I know lots of people that told me they're working 2 jobs to pay their rent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tilley.
Chair, we have Michael Bear. Michael, when you're ready, please present your comment.
John Tilley, please go back and read the Coastal Commission staff report about why they recommend denial of the desal plant. There's at least half a dozen essentially insurmountable engineering problems, such as the dunes are going to cover up the thing. They haven't figured out how to deal with the outfall pipe. There's the whole thing of environmental justice. It goes on and on and on. And Cal-Am has made essentially zero progress in 2 years since they pulled, the year and a half since they pulled out of the meeting when they were going to be denied. And they're not making any progress. So you're living in a pipe dream if you think Cal-Am's desal plant is going to be built this decade. They do not have the engineering. The Coastal Commission has put up, has identified obstacles that they are making no effort to meet. You got to get over it. It ain't gonna happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bear.
Chair Paul, I do not see anybody with their hands raised, so I'll return this back to the board.
Thank you, Joel. So now it's time for directors' reports, and that can include reports on trips, conferences.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I believe you skipped over a report from General Counsel.
How could I have done that?
It happens, you're amongst the best of them in doing that, so thank you.
Please
I'm
forgive
gonna jump in here and provide a report on the district's closed session of December 29. But before I do that, I have to say good evening to the entire board, and I'll call out to former Chair Edwards, and I know that it's been a long-standing goal of his to become former chair yet again. So you've achieved that. So congratulations. So it was a pleasure working with you as chair, and I will continue to enjoy our interactions as we go forward. But returning to December 29, the board did meet in closed session to consider one item on the agenda, and that was potential litigation. The board did provide receive a status report from staff and counsel, and did provide general direction that led to the discussion that Mr. Stoll had about the retention of potential litigation counsel, Shute, Mahoney, and Weinberger, if the district does decide to file an action against LAFCO for their actions for the decision on the latent powers application. General direction was provided, but no specific reportable action was taken at that meeting. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Laredo. Any questions? Director Edwards, you're muted.
Thank you. Mr. Laredo, thank you for the comments. Did we have a cost estimate about what we're about to do? Can we throw out a cost estimate to the public?
We do not have a full cost estimate. We have a task and evaluation of the process to be followed, the opportunities for success, the obstacles related to success, and a specific cost estimate. And that will be returning to the board this next month.
Okay. And my next question, I don't know if you can answer this or not, but the Taxpayer Association lawsuit, is that we're going to have different dates on that for the hearing? I heard
at the court's direction, that matter was put over to next month, and I can tell you what those dates are in just a moment here. I can pull up my screen. I'm sorry, I did not have that loaded.
that's all I heard. It was about February 18th or something around that.
It was moved to a later date, but I don't recall either.
No, it is actually, you are correct. It is on February 18th in Department 14 at 8:30 a.m.
Okay, thank you. I just want to keep the public informed on that.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Thanks to both of you for that. Other questions? Okay, now it's time for director's reports, including reports on conferences that are subject to AB 1234. Yes, Director Riley.
Thank you. I was involved in 2 meetings in the past month. One was the Water Master. The Water Master has formed a special committee with Brown Act regulations applying to it. It's called an outreach committee. We just had 1 meeting, but the issue is to kind of identify in more specific manner what the stress is on the Seaside Groundwater Basin, and what the Basin Board wants to, the Water Master Board wants to do about informing the public. It's a little complicated, and I don't want to take the time to do this now. And maybe in one of our committee meetings, we might want to go into some facet of this. But it has to do with the relationship of the Seaside Groundwater Basin, and then Corral de Terra and their needs, and then Marina Coast up in that north of us, their needs, and then sequentially beyond that, the Salinas Groundwater Basin issue and the whole GSA issue over there. So anyway, that can come up at some later. We're just starting that process on just some kind of discussing an outreach campaign. The other meeting I went to was a special district association, and some of the other board members attended that same meeting. What was fascinating about that is that Steve, I think that's his first name, Steve Vangini, who's the county assessor, gave a presentation, and he made some very, very interesting comments throughout. And it was an interesting presentation, really. But there were some specific questions about what happens with acquisitions of private property by a public agency. And he made some very interesting comments. I think we're going to end up having some discussion around this in the future. But anyway, it was just fascinating to me. And there were a lot of, it was a good attendance. Even Kate McKenna was there, who's the chief staff person for LAFCO. She made a short update report, not any different than what our general manager reported. Anyway, but they're just very, very interesting when the speaker is speaking to subjects that are deeply familiar to us on the peninsula. Anyway, that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Riley. I'd like to add a follow-up your report. I attended the meeting as well as did Director Edwards and our general manager. And Steovoni talked quite a bit actually about scenarios where private property is sold to a tax-exempt agency. And he gave quite a few examples, some of them that I remember, or that the Monterey School of International the Middlebury School of International Studies has bought up a lot of the property in downtown Monterey. The aquarium has also bought private properties around the aquarium, and it too is tax exempt. The golf course in Carmel Valley that became a public park was another example he gave, and those are just the ones I happen to remember. He said this happens all the time, that private property is acquired by a tax-exempt entity. It happens all the time. And what he left unsaid, but I think we can all read between the lines, the sky has not fallen. Okay, any other reports on conferences or comments? Yes, Vice Chair Adams.
Thank you. Yes, it's just a comment. And that is that I had talked at our last meeting about an upcoming water forum that is going to be held, and the date on that is going to be March 15th at 1:30, and it will be taking place during the Monterey County Board of Supervisors meeting. So it'll be about a 2-hour presentation, and the staff of all the various water groups have been notified and are working on a plan on how what they're going to be presenting to us.
And would you like to say anything now about what sort of participation you would like to see from this district?
So I think I'd rather wait until there's another planning meeting coming up, and I think I'd rather wait until we have that done before I say much about it. But I did want to get the date down in people's minds.
Thank you.
You're
Appreciate that. Looking forward to hearing more about that.
Thank you.
Other reports? In that case, we can move on to item 12 on the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a fairly straightforward, if not confusing on its own item. This is what is called a reimbursement resolution. It is a perfunctory action related to the IRS tax code. And what it does is it basically puts a stake in the ground that says from this point forward, we can reimburse ourselves for any of the pre-construction costs of Pure Water Monterey expansion from the proceeds of any tax-exempt financing. Now, that doesn't mean we're doing a tax-exempt financing. However, it does cover state revolving fund because state revolving funds are funded by both tax-exempt debt of the state as well as contributions from the EPA. But our current funding strategy for the expansion is we have applied, and when I say we, I mean Monterey One Water in conjunction with the district, but it's Monterey One Water's application has applied to the state for state revolving fund monies, which is how the base project was financed. And that would be a combination of loans and grants, but we would be happy with just all the loan. The rate is typically 1/2 of the most recent general obligation bond interest rate by the state. So it's usually pretty favorable. Also in December, the application for a WIFIA loan WIFIA stands for Water Infrastructure Finance Innovation Act, which is an EPA program for long-term loans for water supply projects. And it wasn't cheap. It was like $100,000 application fee, but we had been on their list as an accepted feasibility study for really over a year. So now this consummates putting us in the queue for actual financing. Our hope is to get through the Public Utilities Commission on an expedited timeline and get approval of the water purchase agreement. Approval of the water purchase agreement will then allow bid documents to be released to the street, and financing has to happen. So if either the state revolving fund or the WIPIA program are not ready for us at the time we're ready to move forward with construction, then we might do some tax exempt notes. There's also a federally backed banking program that SoCal Creek used for basically a line of credit. So we're looking at that as well. But anyway, approving this resolution doesn't lock you into anything. It just creates the opportunity to reimburse the district for costs from the loan proceeds whenever they occur. And so it's just covering our bases here up front.
Thank you. Any questions on this resolution? Is there a motion to?
Go to the public.
Yes, Director Malik.
I make a motion to approve.
Madam Chair, you have comments from the public that you might want to take before you entertain your motion.
Okay.
Yes, Sarah, could you display the timer? So that way I could invite those who have their hands raised to make their public comment on this matter. So at this time, I would like to invite John Tilley. John, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Dave, thanks for the good news on the water purchase agreement. I think that this is where the focus should be. I think the sooner we get to a stabilized water project that is sufficient for the community, the better. And when we finally get to a place where the water purchase agreements are finalized that carry us into the next couple of decades is where we should be aiming to get to. I really, for many years, thought that the money that the district has that is used to reduce water rates should be focused on the PUC process. When you hire experts, when you hire law firms, when you hire an analyst, wouldn't it be okay to put a few $1 million directly into that process to reduce water rates based upon that versus infrastructure cost? The need for infrastructure is there. We're building out a project, and I think that funds that are earmarked for use in the district should be for capital improvement projects, not for lawsuits. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tilley. Are there other members of the public who wish to address the board? Joel? I think I saw one.
Yeah, this is
Sorry,
Rudy.
I had my mic muted. We have Rudy Fisher. So Rudy, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Thank you, Joel. Yeah, I support this. I think, I want to encourage you to work with Pure Water Monterey in any way you can. Pure Water Monterey project provides clean, safe, and sustainable source of water for Monterey County. It uses advanced water recycling technology and replenishes our groundwater supply. Thing to do. It's also good for our environment, and it's proven itself now. I was the M1 board chair when we approved the current plant, and I have to tell you, we had to go to the state and get some loans and ask for some grants, and I had to sit down with Dave Stolt and Paul Shudo and sign for an $80 million loan. And actually, I think it was more money than that. I think it was about $103 million. It was a loan and grant combination. So I kind of had to gulp and ask them, you guys are good for this, right? But they were, and the water recycling plant was built, it's done. I couldn't be more proud of how it turned out. General Manager Paul Shudo and staff certainly should be proud. You know, for that plant, which didn't exist, 5 years ago, to now provide 37% of the Monterey Peninsula's water is just absolutely fabulous. And I think now that's in full production, expansion is quite doable. You know, I'll give some kudos to your agency too. I don't think the MPWMD got enough at the time, but even your agency helped in a lot of ways to make the project happen with engineering support, political support, financial support. And I know this is before most of you guys joined the board, but it was a tremendous asset to have you guys behind us. And the financial part really helped because we could not use sewage ratepayer money to build a water plant. But the state of California gave M1W $80 million loan at very low interest rates, which was great. And the state and federal governments have given M1W or Pure Water Monterey now about $30 million in grants. And I'd like to say, you know, I hope we ask for or we seek more grants because grants go right to the cost of the plant and help lower the water bills. But I think the plant is a great example of what can be accomplished when people and agencies work together. I wish we could do that for the rest of the water we need so we can get off the state cease and desist order. And I look forward to seeing the deep injection wells in operation by March. I think that's great news. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. If there are,
Chair Paul, I do not, actually, Rudy Fisher. Rudy, when you're ready, please present your comment.
he just did.
He had his hand raised, so.
Yep, there it goes.
Sarah, could you take down the timer? And we'll return this back to the board.
Hey, and just so everyone knows, Rudy was chair of Monterey One Water through a critical period where a lot of this financing occurred. And, you know, you can find a picture of him signing an agreement with Paul and I in the background. And he was instrumental to the success of the base project. I think he undersold the district's contribution, but I appreciate his recognition of the district's role in this whole process. We like to say we saved this project 3 times, but no one can either discount or overstate the contributions of both public agencies in getting that project complete.
Thank you for that, Dave. So Director Malik made a motion to adopt this resolution, this financing resolution.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? And let's take it to a vote, please.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Edwards,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Aye.
Director Roberson,
Yes.
Director Malik,
Yep.
Vice Chair Adams,
Aye.
Chair Paul.
Yes.
The motion passes on a vote of 7-0.
Thank you. Now we've come to item 13.
Yes, and I will introduce this, but I have to tell you that Joel Pablo has done all of the work on this to date, working with you to get your recommended appointees, as well as working with our demographers to schedule times, and kudos to Joel. There have been appointments made for each divisional director, as well as the city and the county. And I actually commend Troy Ishikawa and Stephen Lilly. Troy is the county's appointee, and Stephen Lilly is the city's appointee, and they're both listening tonight, which is good to see them online. But also there are 4 positions. I just want you to know that Mark Pawson has withdrawn his interest. So you're looking at 4 individuals, all terrifically qualified to fill the 2 at-large positions. 2 of those are on our Zoom meeting tonight, Monica Lal and Mark Eisenhart. You may remember Mark from consideration for the Division 3 board position that Director Malik currently holds. And Monica, I believe, has been interim with the chamber. So the list between Connie Murray with League of Women Voters, Monica and Mark, and then Wayne Downey, who's been active and involved in a lot of things in Monterey and elsewhere for years. It's a good set of 4 people to consider. Joel, sorry for stealing your thunder. Do you want to introduce this any further and let the directors know what they have to do?
Yeah, so I actually prepared something. Good evening, board members, district staff, and members of the public. The item before you is item number 15, which is to ratify director division appointments, allow for at-large applicants to address the board, and nominate and select 2 applicants to serve on the MPWMD Redistricting Advisory Commission. Before I get to the item, I would like to inform the board and members of the public regarding redistricting and a few highlights of the district's ongoing efforts on this process. As a result of the 2020 decennial census, public agencies must go through a process of redistricting or redrawing of district lines. In short, redistricting helps determines whether communities have a voice in government and to ensure that communities are represented by local governments and that their elected officials reflect the full diversity of California's population. When drawing district division lines, the district must comply with requirements established by the United States Constitution, the California Constitution, the Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965, the California Voting Rights Act of 2001, and the California Elections Code. So touching on some of the highlights, on June 21, 2021, the board authorized staff to enter into a contract with Latkoff and Gobelet Demographic Research to assist the district in its redistricting efforts. Staff has been in communication and is coordinating with Shelley and Gian to build the necessary foundation needed to prepare for all the work that will be involved in the coming weeks. On October 18th, 2021, the board authorized the district to advertise the Redistricting Commission in local publications for 2 consecutive weeks and accept statements of interest from prospective applicants. And Dave Stoll, I believe he went down the list here of those who were appointed, and those are Susan Steovoni, Esther Malkin, Nancy Southridge, Tama Over, Mylene Fisher, Troy Ishikawa, and Stephen Lilly. And in an effort to educate the public on this process and to seek volunteers to serve on the Redistricting Commission as an at-large appointee, a public outreach campaign was launched in late 2022, and the district was able to release a press release to local media, various communities of interest to include, but are not limited to, the Monterey County NAACP, League of Women Voters, the Essalon Tribe, and a number of resident neighborhood associations on the peninsula were notified, just to name a few. In addition, the district has set up a dedicated webpage on the process, and for 2 consecutive weeks, we were able to get the message across via social media on our Twitter and Facebook pages, and advertisements in the Monterey County Weekly and Carmel Pinecone and the PG Press were ran for 2 consecutive weeks. Then on December 13th, the board approved the commission's rule of procedure, which brings us to today. The commission will be staffed by Dave Stoll, General Manager, David Laredo, District Counsel, and myself, and staff at Latkoff and Gobelet. You have 4 candidates, Connie Murray and Monica Lau, Mark Eisenhart, and Wayne Downey. So in addition, I would like to let you know that the first proposed meeting date of the Redistricting Commission will be on February 14th, and not the dates listed on the staff report. The board is expected to be presented with proposals of draft maps at its March 2022 meeting and a special meeting of the board in April 2022, and that date is still to be determined. Will need to be scheduled before April 17th. Staff recommendation is to have the board ratify the appointments to the commission, allow for at-large applicants to address the board, and Chair Paul, I believe we agreed to 5 minutes each. And the board will appoint 2 at-large members to formalize the redistricting commission. Before I turn it over to the board, Dave, do you have anything else to add?
Nope, I think you've done a terrific job.
Outstanding. I think you have in a few weeks become the most knowledgeable person possibly among us, with the exception of our district council maybe, on this rather complicated endeavor, which is done very rarely. So we are in your debt, Joel. I am just wondering whether we should take a vote to ratify the appointments that have been made before we move on to the hearing from the at-large candidates, the candidates for the at-large positions, and deciding which of them will serve.
Madam Chair, that action would be appropriate to ratify the appointments of the individual directors.
Thank you. I think I'd like to do that because that is simple, and then we can have that done and then move on to the more
You
complicated.
can ratify all of those appointees with one motion.
Okay, do I have a motion to ratify the 7 appointments listed?
do.
on Page 67. Thank you.
I have a question, if I might, Chair. Do we need to go out to the public on this action or not?
I assume we do.
Because we have a motion and a second on the table, so we should have public comment.
Yes, you should go to public comment.
Okay, thank you for that reminder.
And the motion is for the established,
To ratify the 7 appointees.
yes, the 5 made by district members and 1 from the county and 1 from the mayors.
That's right.
Thank you.
And that's on, for anyone who's trying to find, this is on page 67 of the
Yep.
agenda packet, Exhibit 13A. Those appointees are listed there. Do we have any members of the public that wish to address the board on this?
Director Paul, I see Alvin Edwards' hand raised. Alvin, Director Edwards, do you have anything to say before we take it out to? the
Oh,
public?
yes.
Yeah. I just had a couple of questions. And I don't know when y'all can bring this out, but can board members listen in to the meetings?
Yes.
We can listen. Okay.
Yes, you can.
Okay, and another one, voting. Everybody have that one vote, right? Or do these at-large commissioners have a little bit more oof than the others?
No, sir. One person, one vote.
Okay, thank you.
What a concept. Okay, any other questions about the process? We know there are 3 meetings. I'd just like to say that when we get to the at-large candidates, that they will have an opportunity to ask questions about what will be expected of them and how the process will work. But are there any questions about that now? Okay.
Are there any members of the public that has public comment on ratification of the director appointments? And I do not see anybody with their hands raised, so I'll return this back to the board.
Thank you. Let's vote on that motion.
Yes, Director Edwards,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Aye.
Director Roberson,
Yes.
Director Malik,
Of course.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Adams.
Aye.
Chair Paul.
Yes.
The motion passes on a vote of 7-0.
Before you go on, if I should have done this during discussion, I wanted to tell you from the mayor's viewpoint, I contacted all of our district mayors and Mayor Bill Peak, suggested and had recruited Stephen Lilly. And I want to express appreciation to both Mayor Bill and Stephen for stepping up. And so that we could spread as much as possible the mayor's appointment to all 6 cities, not just Monterey.
Thank you very much for doing that and for sharing that. Thank you. And I want to thank every single person who volunteered to serve on this redistricting commission. So now we turn to the at-large, the four candidates in the running for the 2 at-large positions. Joelle, is there anything you want to tell us before we entertain a motion?
So we have 4 at-large applicants. So they'll need to address the board. I have a timer that I will have in the background. When we get to their last minute and a half, I'll go ahead and share the timer so that way the applicants know how much time they have left before their time is up. And then I will be calling on the applicants by a list that I have here. So
yeah, and just to clarify, only 2 of the applicants for the at-large position are in attendance. So it's an opportunity for them to make a statement, but you will not hear from all 4.
Oh, and they are the 2 who are here?
Mark Eisenhart and I believe Monica Lau.
Lau.
Right.
Very
Yeah.
good.
Through the chair right fast, if I may, General Manager Joel, was everybody invited to this meeting?
Yes, I did invite all of the applicants to this meeting. I have sent follow-up emails to Wayne Downey. So I do not have any additional information for you or to provide to the board as to his background.
Okay, well, I just want to know, was everybody invited?
Yes.
And okay, thank
They
you.
were
Thank you, Chair.
invited along with the director appointments as well.
Okay, thank you.
And Joelle, correct me if I'm wrong, they were told that this is an opportunity for them to tell the board a little
Yes.
more about their interest and to ask questions about what's expected of them.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so let's hear from our 2 candidates who are here.
So first up, I'm gonna go ahead and invite Mark Eisenhart. And Mark, I'll go ahead and promote you to panelists. And then when you're ready, you may present to the board.
Okay, hopefully you guys can see me. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, very briefly. First, Dave Stoltz, very kind of you to remember me from last year and to say the kind words. I appreciate that. That was nice. And Joelle, I want to underscore the questions that Director Edwards has had for you recently. Yes, I received your emails. There were a number of them. All of the applicants were copied. And I don't have any questions. Joelle, you sent me all of the links along with all of the other applicants for the webpage. I had downloaded all of the PDFs. I read them with interest, the rules, the purpose, and the process, and it couldn't be any clearer. So no questions about the process. I don't have much to say apart from what was in my statement that I submitted, except to say, and I think many of you already know this, I'm very passionate about supporting the good work of this district. But in addition to that, I'm definitely very excited at an opportunity to strengthen the voting franchise and to ensure fairness and level voting. As you may have seen in my CV, I'm a litigator. I've been practicing law for over 25 years, representing, quite honestly, countless clients in their civil or housing or employment or consumer rights cases. And so this is quite different for me, an opportunity instead of vindicating rights in the courthouse to be on the ground and making a difference without a dispute and in my own community. So I invite the opportunity, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Anybody like to ask any questions of Mr. Eisenhart? I don't see any, so thank you very much. And we'll go on and hear from Monica Lau now.
Thank you.
Monica Lau. When you're ready, please present to the board.
And hello, good evening. Good evening, Board of Directors, staff, fellow members of the public. Thank you for this opportunity to be here. My interest in general as a citizen and community member was piqued when I had the opportunity to represent District 5 on the Advisory Redistricting Committee for the county. And I learned a tremendous amount. And that was at a pretty accelerated, very rapid pace. But I very much enjoyed it. It probably took 4 or 5 meetings to kind of understand with the maps, but it was really interesting to hear the diversity of opinions in real time, to see the digital divide for some of our supervisors and fellow county members trying to join these meetings at the times of day. So that was pretty eye-opening. But I consider it a privilege, fascinating. I have a long and deep knowledge of our community. I born and raised here, have worked in a number of capacities, went to school here, kids in school here, and participated in varied volunteer opportunities. So I feel I have a broad perspective, and I welcome the opportunity to really learn and hear what people are interested in seeing in our community. So pretty much that's it. I'm available for any questions, and I will echo what was previously said. Joel was a great communicator. Everyone was CC'd, and the information was very available.
Thank you very much for that, Monica, Ms. Lau, and thank you for applying. And you certainly have great experience for for this round 2 of redistricting. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Lau? Well, I am prepared to make a motion or entertain a motion, but are we required to take this out to the public at this?
Madam Chair, you are, and you do have at least one person wanting to comment.
Okay. So if there are no questions, and if you have no questions, Ms. Lau, we will thank you, and shortly we'll make a decision, and we very much appreciate your willingness to serve on this commission.
Well, thank you for your time, and thank you for your work for the community, all of you. Thank you.
Okay, let's take it out to the public.
Sarah, can you please display the timer? And at this time, I would like to invite John Tilley.
Thank you very much. This is an opportunity to choose between a diverse voice or choosing to put a representative in place that simply espouses the values of public water now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish
Chair
to?
Paul, we do not have anybody with their hands raised, so I'll return this back to the board.
Okay, well, I would like to make a motion to appoint Ms. Lau and Mr. Eisenhart.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Mr. Eisenhower, he's in this meeting tonight, right?
Yes.
Okay, I support that motion. They showed up. I think they need to be appointed. I wish everybody would have showed up because I like to hear them, but they took the time to show up here. You know, the Warriors are on, but they took the time to show up. So I'm going to support the motion. Thank you.
Yeah. I feel very confident that both of them will do an excellent job and contribute a lot to the commission.
Yeah, and just so I can add before you get to your vote, Connie Murray at one point suggested that maybe she wouldn't serve and she would just observe the meetings because she was concerned about schedule. But then we asked her straight up and she said, I would be happy to serve and we'll find a way to make it work. So just so you know, it was kind of back and forth. she will be observing no matter what. She has a strong interest in this and approached the district early on. So you can rest assured that that will happen. And many of you know Wayne is he's a gentleman and a very good person. But I tend to agree with the if you show up, that counts for something. And I think in this case, it's a great motion.
Well, thank you, General Manager. I would point out in terms of participation from League of Women Voters that Tama Olver is also on the board of League of Women Voters. So we have
Terrific.
one person.
Yep.
It's going to be a slate of 100% women and one man.
No.
Done here.
Amen.
No.
You got
Three
three
men.
men.
Oh, 3 men, excuse me.
Yeah.
I was about to say, we're really going to get it done.
Look at the city and council. Sorry.
3.
That's okay. It's still heavily estrogen laden. So,
Madam Chair, you have a motion. It would be appropriate to take a motion to close nominations.
Do I have a motion?
Before we close, George Riley had his hand up. I don't, he's not speaking out.
No, I'll comment later, but I move that we close nominations.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Okay, let's vote on that.
Give me a second here. Director Roberson,
Yes.
Director Riley.
Aye.
Okay.
What happened?
Director Edwards,
Yes.
Director Malik,
Yep.
Director Anderson,
Yes. Sorry.
Vice Chair Adams,
Aye.
Chair Pop.
Yes.
Motion
The
passes.
carrier.
Comment?
Director Riley.
I would like to support the motion, and I would like to add just a little additional perspective. The number of men, the number of women, the number of minority representations are pretty well balanced. And I think when you go across the board, you can feel pretty good about what we're doing here tonight. So I will definitely support the motion.
We also have a fairly good geographic representation. We have only one person from Seaside, but at least we have one. And the others are pretty well sprinkled around the district, different cities of the district and Carmel Valley. Any other comments? Okay, then let's proceed to a vote.
It's, Director Malik,
Yes.
Director Roberson,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Aye.
Director Edwards,
Yes.
Vice Chair Adams,
Aye.
Chair Pop.
Yes.
The motion passes on a vote 7-0.
I didn't get to vote.
Oh, sorry, you're on the other page. Director Anderson,
Yes.
okay, the motion passes on a vote 7-0.
This is the little rascal right here who voted instead of George.
He probably had to, yeah, we probably had to count that. I thought we was gonna have to have an investigation over that.
Yeah.
I thought he was fighting Amy Anderson.
Like George to me.
So congratulations to and thank you to Mark Eisenhart and Monica Lau. And you'll be hearing from Joelle, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Now, we have item 14 is the ordinance 152 Oversight Panel Annual Report. We are just asked to receive this report. Do directors want to comment on it, or does General Manager want to tell us something about it?
Yeah, let me just give you a brief introduction. So the Ordinance 152 panel was established as a result of negotiation back in 2012 when the district decided to replace its user fee, expand the collections in order to do water supply planning, and basically create a new revenue stream for the district. It was to include representatives from each director, so similar to what we just did for redistricting, as well as a panel member from the realtors, the Monterey County Association of Realtors, MCAR, and the Monterey Peninsula Taxpayers Association. So just so you've got a feel for it, Susan Steovoni is the Division 1 rep, Jason Campbell, who also sits on Seaside City Council, is Division 2 rep, Melody Chrislock, who you know from her involvement in Public Water Now, is the Division 3 rep, Marley Melton is the Division 4 rep, Mike Rachel, who also sits on the board of Carmel Area Wastewater District, is the Division 5 rep, Kevin Urquhart, former senior fisheries biologist at the district, is the supervisory rep, and Mayor Bill Peak is the mayoral rep. Scott Dick, who also works with MCAR and Government Affairs Director, is the MCAR panel member, and then Mr. John Tilley, who used to be a division representative, is now the Monterey Peninsula Taxpayers Association. So those are the folks who collectively come together 3 to 4 times a year to kind of oversee what's happening with the water supply charge. The water supply charge is a charge that was established to produce about $3.4 million a year for both water supply projects as well as the people and services related to water supply projects. The annual report was originally set up to be received in September of every year, which made no sense to the panel several years ago. And so we shifted it to an annual calendar year report, which has kind of been how it's been done most recently in recent years. This particular report, there's a couple of changes from previously. We've included some financial information just to better show both you and the readers the types of things that are being utilized with the water supply charge or for the water supply charge. And I can tell you the primary authors on this, even though your general manager in effect meets with the panel and creates a draft, it becomes the panel's document through comments and editing as well. And of course, they set the stage for what should be in the draft to begin with. This particular year, the primary contributors were Susan Steovoni, John Tilley, Melody Chrislock, and Marley Melton. But all members did have a chance to review the initial draft before additional comments were received. And there were a couple of rounds of comments between the panel members. So with that background, you're not only encouraged to receive it, you're encouraged to read it, which I'm sure you all did when you had the packet, but you are not bound to act upon it. It is an advisory role, and your job, as you aptly pointed out, is to receive it.
Thank you, Dave. I have read it, and I want to thank the members of the committee of the panel for this report. It's very helpful, and it's good to know that there's understanding out there in the community of what the water supply charge is for and why it's still currently needed. And we all know that as it explains in the report, the panel doesn't have to reach consensus, as it's not expected. So if there are different points of view, they're explained as you did in your report, and that's totally appropriate. And I think it's a good report, and I'm sure all the directors have read it. Do any directors have any comments on it? George?
Yeah, my comment is, I used to serve on that committee before I was elected to the district board. I think it's a fantastic educational opportunity for a cross-section of our community who are probably more interested in a lot of what the district does. This not just the normal public. This is a select public, but it's those that have a particular interest and a particular relationship and a particular point of view. And it's a great opportunity to have these cross-interest discussions. And I think Dave has been absolutely unbelievably candid with this group. And this group is also exceptionally candid with Dave. It's a great dialogue. And I tune in occasionally just so I want to be entertained, first of all. Not first of all, but second of all, I am entertained. But I find it just very informative. And I just think it's a great little committee, and it's a good thing to have the district to have this, even though it was forced on the district during the process of the user fee. But I think it's a good component of what the district outreach is and information with some selected public members.
Thank you. Director Anderson.
I thought it was a good report. I don't remember reading one last year. If there was one, I don't remember seeing it, but that was maybe the beginning of my service on this board. I thought it was really clearly presented, and I liked the fact that the report did point out that there was a majority view and that there were some that did not agree. I thought that was helpful rather than just ignoring that there was a difference of opinion on some things. So that's all I have to say about it. I appreciated getting it. And it does sound like it's interesting to go to these meetings. And these people probably are really, they know a lot about what's going on in the district, obviously. And I think that's great. The more public education, the better.
Director Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. Dave, you did an excellent job on writing that. I listened to that meeting and everybody wanted to make a comment. And I like how you put it in there in your report. You put it all in there, but you didn't put no names in there on it. And it was very professional way you did it. And I like that. I also like to say that the mention of the lawsuit, I don't care as a board member if you put it in there. It affects that water supply. I think anybody in the public that reads that report should know that you had a closed session on the water supply and inform that committee of what's going on, because it affects us. It affects all of us. So just not on the board level, but at that committee level, I don't mind to see you put that in the report that you had a closed session on that. And that's the only argument I heard, basically, that some people say, no, it's up to the board. So I bring it to the board. That's part of I believe it's part of the report, because they had a closed session. It's about that. And the only thing it's saying is that we're being sued and we're taking care of that suit. That's all I have, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. So are you saying that an explanation about that should have been included in the report?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Just an explanation, because it happened, and we like to be as transparent as possible. It's something we're not trying to hide.
Good point. Dave, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I think because we didn't get any conclusion, and I think that because there's a large number of us, both on staff and on the board, who think that the lawsuit is somewhat frivolous and will not prevail. Just didn't want to address it, didn't want to elevate it. But I think that the director's point is well made, that you can't pretend it doesn't exist. So it could have benefited from at least being mentioned, because in the current annual report, it is relevant. I should also point out that I'm looking at the PDF and I'm looking at the HTML, and it looks like the exhibit or the attachment on the financial data did not find its way into your packet. So I will huddle with Joelle and figure out whether it was dropped in transmission from me to Joelle or in the packet formation, but we'll send around for everybody, and what'll get posted on the web will include that.
For anyone who is listening who might not be clear what that last discussion about closed session was about, it's related to the taxpayer lawsuit. A taxpayer association sued the district over this user fee, and about the district collecting both the user fee and the water supply charge.
Right.
And one of the plaintiffs is John Tilley, who's also on the Ordinance 152 panel. So
Yeah, just clarification, not John personally, but the organization that he represents. So, yeah.
thank you.
Madam Chair, this is on your agenda for to receive the report. I do see that you have one member of the public that would like to comment on this.
Thank you. So let's hear from Mr. Tilley now.
Sarah, could you display the timer? John, when you're ready, please present your comment.
Joelle, thank you as always. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, board members. Thank you, everybody in the public that cares about water like I do. I wanted to really express my gratitude for being allowed to express my concerns in the 152 report. It was being set up as a majority rule situation, and therefore, if you don't agree with what we're saying, you don't count. I'm glad to say that the group changed that attitude and allowed minority opinions to be included, which is, if you look at the charge of the 152 committee, exactly what should be happening. I'd also like to thank Dave for his work with this. He purposefully included my remarks in this. And I would also like to point out what's happened with just over the years, the need for Dave to first step up and do what we did in Sacramento in 2016, and that was putting the water supply project in place. That was a super, super heavy lift. And to see this district do a 180 and say, wait a minute, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to go down this route and ask your district manager to go along with you has been another incredibly heavy lift. So Dave, thank you for all your great work. Yes, the 152 committee is a cross interest, and it is not a great little committee. It is as George just said, it is a important committee. It's not a little committee, George. This is like the public outreach you should do. You should be trying to stack things just to have your folks lined up to say what you want them to say. It should be a diverse group of people that talk about the diverse needs of this community. In terms of the closed session, that was actually pretty freaking shocking to see that it wasn't included in the minutes of the committee. I don't know. I mean, I caught it at the last, toward the tail end of the meeting, and it had occurred. The meeting was going on, and it was going into a closed session, and I was asked specifically to be excluded from that, which was fine. I took that fine. Karen, Paul, I'm not personally involved in this lawsuit. I'm not even a member of the Monterey Business Taxpayer Association. I am their appointee. So thank you for knowing that. And,
Noted.
yeah, and just there are diverse groups out there. There are diverse opinions, and it's really time for this community to not look at a bottleneck of water supply, but look to the greater community to plan how we use our water resources going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tilley.
Chair Paul, I do not see anybody with their hands raised, so I'll return this back to the board.
Thank you. Are there any further comments or questions? If not, is there a motion to receive this report?
I make a motion that we receive the report.
Thank you. Second from Director Malik, I believe. Yes? Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Edwards,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Aye.
Director Robertson,
Yes.
Director Malik,
Yep.
Vice Chair Adams,
Aye.
Chair Paul.
Yes,
Motion passes on a vote of 7-0.
thank you. And now we come to the question of the board committees. And I suggested we put this on our agenda as for discussion because I found, when tasked with trying to figure out the committee appointments, that it was really difficult to cover all the committees with 3 committee members and the number of meetings and alternates. And, in conversations I had with some of the directors, I started to get the feeling that maybe we had committees scheduled to meet more often than we really need to. So some of the committees probably do need to meet monthly, but maybe some don't. I know water supply planning, I'll say, for example, I think does need to meet monthly. There's always, always things happening with water supply. Maybe the same is true of the demand committee. I'm not sure. That's, I would welcome your opinions on that. The legislative committee meets quarterly. Public outreach, I think, has been scheduled for monthly meetings, but they don't actually meet that often. And the administrative committee, reviews a lot of the agenda items in advance. So I guess I'd just like to ask the board members and Dave Stolt, do you see any places where we could streamline either the committee structure or the frequency of the meetings? Yes, please, Supervisor Adams.
So interesting that we're talking about this right now because we're dealing with this in a little different frame at the Board of Supervisors. And what I'm just wondering if you may want to consider doing, rather than trying to have an open discussion, if maybe we should consider appointing an ad hoc committee that could really mull through this more thoroughly and then come back to us as a board with some different permutations, some suggestions and some ideas. So we would have something more concrete from which to begin.
That's a good suggestion. Yeah. Do other directors think that would be a better way to proceed rather than, yes, Director Anderson?
I agree with Mary, and I know that on my nonprofit board that I've been on forever, it's become much more efficient to have a subcommittee bring a suggestion and summarize their proceedings, their thoughts, than just start open with a new subject without any kind of direction. So I would support something like that.
It sounds like a good idea to me. Yes, Mayor Roberson.
You can call me Clyde. As Mary's pointed out, I've been through this a few times in my 40 years on and off the city council. And our current policy with our council and our boards and commissions is we don't have any standing subcommittees. We do ad hoc subcommittees, as Mary's suggesting, and that is when you have a particular topic that you want some board members to bring back to the full board. And I see the value of standing subcommittees, but one of the disadvantages of standing subcommittees, especially in planning, is when you have planning commissioners who are on a committee and they're looking at a project that may be controversial, when they report back to the full planning commission as a subcommittee, they're almost making a recommendation. They're almost writing the report for the staff. So they have a built-in bias to support whatever's ever coming out of the committees. Now, being on the demand committee, that hasn't been the case whatsoever. The only observation I would make is how much staff time is spent on the subcommittees on items that are subsequently brought to the full board. So, or is the staff doing double meetings, double reports, when some of these things could could go directly to the board? For a quick example would be when we looked at the, you'll have to help me, General Manager, with the valves, the leak valves that you can install that would tell you if you had a leak on your water line.
Yeah, the flow meters. Yeah.
Flow meters, thank you. So we had a real extensive discussion at the water demand and then at the board. And quite honestly, it could have gone to the board. It was something I thought was pretty routine. And so that's what I would possibly look at. What items would each committee really need to be looking at, and not duplicating staff effort. And I know the staff is really conscientious and wants to make sure everyone's informed. So that would be my brief observations if we'd go ad hoc committee. And I love creating a subcommittee to study subcommittees. I think that's really good.
You want to be on it? You want to be on the ad hoc committee?
Well, if we go there, sure. I might be saving you all a lot of time going forward.
Yeah.
What? Through the chair.
Yes.
I like to see us talk about it as a group, but if the ad hoc committee needs to be done, we could do it. But with me, like the ledge committee, I don't know how much money we're paying them to come back and tell us what could be out there, and we don't apply for none of them. I believe that committee probably could be shut down for a while. If anything, partner with next door with them if we see something that comes up. But I don't know how much we're paying them. Well, we paying them $60,000 a year just to come back 4 times a year to tell us something. I could spend that $60,000 a year with public outreach. So it needs to discuss. If, like I said, if we're not going to hire a grant writer, if we're not going to put in for those grants, we don't need to be every 4 months just say, okay, this out there. Now, I just read an article that I know that the water supply, we're looking at grants for underground, taken care of. That money, that $1 billion, been given out already. So if it's not nothing there to put in for a grant, we need to shut down the committee and have that money go to public outreach where we can get one postcard out to the citizens and say we shut it down. But
it seems to me, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'm done with that.
It seems to me you're raising a different issue, which is our priorities and whether the money that we spend on the legislative tracking and legislative advocacy is worth it and a good use of our money, which seems to me is a sort of a different issue, maybe one that needs to be addressed. But
what the reason I said, if you're talking about having a committee meeting, we're going to have a committee meeting coming up with Ledge. So why are we going to have a committee meeting and we're not going to do anything but listen and pay them? Mm-hmm. That's my point right there. You talking about cutting committees, let's just put that one dormant for a while, move the money into outreach where we can get a postcard out. It's just, you talking about limiting committees. That's one that I think we can limit. And
how about if we form, yes, George.
No, just go ahead, finish your comment.
Well, I was going to suggest that we form an ad hoc committee, possibly composed of me, Alvin, and Clyde, but it could be others depending on your interest and your time available in working on this to come up with a proposal. Yes, George?
I'm gonna spin a little bit off of Alvin's comments. We've had this committee structure for a long time. And I remember during the GM evaluation, there were some questions about how are we supposed to evaluate what happens within the organization that never reaches the board, structure somehow. And so it's not like an oversight issue. But I'm just curious if we shouldn't raise the question of the structure we're using now and maybe the names that we're using now and tie them to our goals more than we have. And because it's one thing to go forward. I hear John Tilley often and I listen to him. He's a smart guy. But he raises questions that I think are worth pursuing in some fashion without having it all in public comment structure. And so the 152 committee is where I'm kind of thinking that that's a very dynamic committee. And it covers a lot of issues, even though it's a narrowly structured committee on the user fee. So I'm curious about just rethinking this committee structure in general. And Alvin has made a great point about the ledge. And if it's related to actions that we're likely to take, then it's an important committee. If it's not necessarily related to an action that we might take, then maybe it's had its day, and we ought to be rethinking some of this. So I would support a committee review of committees.
Okay.
Long way getting to my conclusion.
Oh, and thank you, Mary, for that good suggestion. So who would like to serve on the committee?
I'll serve.
Who was that? Was that you?
Alvin. I'll serve on it.
Alvin. Thank you. Good.
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Is 3 enough? 3 enough for this ad hoc?
I
Okay,
think we can only have 3. I think if it were.
that's
4,
right.
Yep.
If you have 4, you have to post notice and invite the public.
Oh,
Thank you. Okay, 3 it is. So the 3 of us will confer offline on how to do that together, okay?
And I think what we should do is go ahead and ratify all of the proposed appointees, because until we revamp it, we're going to keep these.
Yes.
And I believe that Mary Adams is willing to volunteer for the alternate of LegCom. So with that change, that would be what you're looking at. But before you do, let me weigh in a little bit with a preview of what you will hear from me if we do go to an ad hoc committee. Historically, the committees, we had a board when I got here who relied on committee referrals and really valued board meetings that were done in an hour. Meaning they took a lot of what had happened at the committee level and didn't rehash it a lot at the board level. And what I'm hearing here in conversation is a lot of this stuff can be dealt with at the board level. And frankly, if you go an extra hour in a board meeting and that saves you 2 extra hours of committee meetings, then maybe that's a net gain anyway. The other thing historically is about 3 years ago, we scheduled everything monthly under the assumption that we would cancel them when they're not needed, rather than have that flurry of activity at the end of a committee meeting where everyone opens their calendar and then says, "Oh, when's the next time we should meet?" Unfortunately, it's like eternal damnation, because once you schedule them for monthly, and you cancel them, there's always a board member or two. It's like, why are we canceling these meetings? And so it was, there was some frustration that maybe we weren't doing our work because we were canceling meetings. So, damned if you do and damned if you don't. In my personal opinion, you have to have the administrative committee every month because that's the business of the district as a preview, and it is a Brown Act committee, and it's important. They have different names at different organizations, but when the money flows and contracts are let, there should be a subcommittee or a committee looking at that. So that one's kind of, it's untouchable. We're going to end up having that on a monthly basis. Public outreach, water demand, and water supply planning. I would recommend scheduling up every 2 months, not every month. And, but we can talk about that. It could be quarterly as well. They were more important when we didn't have a water supply plan. We're on a very good path now. We used to have a rules and regulations committee, and it never really met very often because most of the new rules and changes fell through the water demand committee. So rather than eliminating that committee, it just went inactive. It still exists, just doesn't meet. Ledge committee, the recent past chairman and that committee and I should talk because it ebbs and flows. We do spend about $130,000 a year for representation in DC and Sacramento. And some years it's really tough to see the value, and other years it's really easy to see the value. You should keep in mind that the 19 million that we successfully got for Pure Water Monterey came from a lot of visits to Washington, DC, a lot of sit downs with Senator Feinstein's staff and US Bureau of Reclamation staff. And even though it was a competitive process, you can't discount the fact that they knew who we were and what the project was. And we actually weighed in on selection criteria and why the way they had it set up kind of penalized new projects and sent money to existing projects and so forth. So 19 million buys a lot of relief, I guess, for a follow-up year where maybe there's less activity. We are currently working on trying to get earmarks for some watershed things. So I will spend time describing the relative benefit of legislative advocacy. But I do believe all of these committees can meet less. And to Director Riley's point, when you meet less, sometimes the meetings can be richer and fuller because you've got some pent up conversations that need to be had. So I look forward to working with the ad hoc committee. But yes, we should go ahead and ratify with the proposed change so we can at least function for the next month or two.
Agreed, and we should do that now. I'd just like to add to the considerations you just went through, Dave, is a question of staff time that Clyde brought up, which is important too. And staff having to do things twice, and all the time that they devote to supporting each of these committees. Yeah. Okay.
Chair Paul, before we go back to item number 2, this is a discussion item, and we're creating a ad hoc committee, I believe, to review this topic. Does this need to be done more formally as an action item or as part of the consent calendar?
I do not believe that you need to do that way. The forming a committee to further study this is an extension of the action. This could actually be done by force of the chair to just appoint that committee. So I think it's appropriate to get the census of the board in terms of.
Yeah, I think it's direction provided. I think we take it as direction provided, and we'll go ahead and do it, but I don't think we need action.
Okay. So Alvin and Clyde and I will meet with you, Dave, and we'll on bringing a proposal to the board.
Yep.
On the committees. And now let's go ahead with ratification of the committee appointments.
So move.
This is the former item 2 pulled from consent calendar,
Yes,
and you have a motion.
Okay.
someone make a motion to.
Yeah, George made a motion.
Okay, thank
You
you.
need a second.
Second,
Second.
Mary, thank you. Director Supervisor Adams has seconded. Let's vote, please.
And
Do you
Chair
need to go
Paul,
to the
will
public?
this, so will this include the modification as stated by Dave Stoll to include Mary Adams as the alternate on the Legislative Advocacy Committee?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Adams, for volunteering to fill that need for the moment.
And Madam Chair, if we can just affirm that there's no member of the public that wishes to speak to this.
Do you
Yeah,
want
so
to-
at this time, if you would like to make public comment on item number 2, please raise your hand. Chair Paul, I do not see anybody with their hands raised. And then the maker of the motion, if they could just state that they approve item number 2 with that modification.
I approve.
So the motion is to approve the list of committee assignments with the modification that we've discussed about the Supervisor Adams serving as alternate on the Ledge Committee.
Director Roberson,
Aye.
Director Riley,
Aye.
Director Edwards, Director Malik,
Yep.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
going back to Director Edwards,
You're muted.
Yes.
Vice Chair Adams,
Aye.
Chair Paul.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Okay, so
Madam Chair, the remaining item on your agenda is the recessing to closed session. It would be appropriate to determine whether you have any public comment on the closed session agenda item. You have one item on the closed session agenda. That's conference with labor negotiators. The board is to select and provide direction to its designated representatives, which would be a subquorum of the board, to negotiate wages and benefits for the general manager, David Stoll. So to determine if you have any public comment.
Yeah, so if you would like to make public comment on closed session item number 1, please raise your hand. And Chair Paul, I do not see anybody with their hands raised, so I'll return this back to the board.
you.
It would be appropriate to convene in closed session. So Joelle, I don't know how you plan on doing that.
All right, so if
And-
you're,
And should I excuse myself?
Recording stopped. Recording in
Should I,
progress.
should I excuse myself from this closed session?
Yes, you should.
Okay. Where's all the people I had to provide public comment on this item?
so
Who's your fan club?
yeah, so if you're a member of the public, I will ask you to log off of this Zoom webinar so that way I could lock up this meeting and the board can convene the closed session meeting. Mario, you could stop recording now. I'll get the